If you grew up in an area that experienced cold weather, you likely have memories of frost, sleet, snow, and other activities associated with winter. You also may remember needing to take extra precautions when exposed to the cold. As an adult, we still need to be aware of and take precautions against cold exposure. The winter season especially is a time when employees are at particular risk from frostbite, hypothermia, dangerous travel conditions, lowered immune systems, and other winter and cold-related hazards. Cold stress from near-freezing temperatures, wind chill, wetness or dampness, and other conditions can be deadly. Workers who are not used to cold, windy, or damp work conditions are at particular risk. Temperature can be a direct factor leading to illness and fatalities, or it can be a contributing consideration that is compounded with underlying medical conditions or other factors. Make a prediction. Which do you think leads to a higher death toll, heat or cold? According to records from the Environmental Protection Agency, more than 11,000 Americans have died from heat-related causes in the past half-century, versus over 19,000 deaths due to cold-related causes, nearly double that of heat-related deaths. Are you surprised? In this training, you will learn how to protect yourself from cold-related hazards through appropriate use of clothing and personal protective equipment. We will also explore different scenarios where winter weather can be particularly fatal at work, on the way to and from work, and at home. Our training will conclude with tips on building your own cold weather preparation and first aid kits to ensure you are ready for the most common effects of cold exposure, along with general tips for dealing with cold stress in the workplace. If you've ever lived, worked, or engaged in recreational activities that involve the cold or wind chill factors, you might have picked up on the idea that control of our body's heat is twofold: core temperature and then extremities. The idea is that if you keep your trunk warm, your body can feed warmth to your extremities. You'll also realize that despite this idea, thermal and moisture protection in the form of appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, is readily available. This includes gloves, earmuffs, boots, and plenty of other gear meant for your extremities. Core temperature clearly is only part of the equation. Keep this in mind as we discuss methods of staying warm and dry in cold weather conditions. In this section, you will also learn about the immediate dangers of exposure to cold and wet work conditions. Remember how we talked about your experiences as a child? The adult in your life may have given you some sage cold weather advice. Dress in layers. Well, don't stop now that you're an adult. Layering, preferably in thin layers to avoid air gaps, is a tried and true prevention remedy for cold weather exposure. OSHA recommends at least 3 layers, including an inner layer for moisture protection, a middle layer for insulation, and an outer layer to provide wind and rain protection that also allows for ventilation to prevent overheating. Overheating events are a hidden danger of cold weather work. You do not want your clothing to be too tight because you still want to be able to breathe, avoid sweating, and easily move and bend. Layers are especially helpful if your work involves transitioning between indoor and outdoor work throughout the day. You can easily remove the outer layer to avoid overheating while inside. Just remember to put that layer back on before you go outside. This also provides an opportunity to change out of wet layers, so keep some dry clothing on hand for this purpose. Be aware that frequent movement between temperatures of hot and cold can affect immune system response and make workers more susceptible to falling ill. Hypothermia indicates a condition where your body temperature falls below normal, specifically under 95 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a common occurrence in prolonged exposure to cold or wet conditions, since your body uses up its available energy and can no longer maintain normal body temperature. The symptoms include uncontrollable shivering, loss of coordination, slowed heart rate and breathing, slurred speech and confusion, and, if severe enough and left untreated, eventual unconsciousness and death. It's likely that one of the first hazards you think about when it comes to extreme temperatures is frostbite. Frostbite is a condition where skin and the underlying tissues, typically at the extremities and exposed areas, become frozen. This often leads to permanent damage. And yes, everything you've ever seen or heard about frostbite leading to amputations is pretty accurate. Fingers, toes, your nose, and earlobes are all at greatest risk of frostbite. Susceptibility to frostbite is heightened for people who have reduced blood circulation. Symptoms include a transition from reddening skin to gray-white patches. Victims could also experience aches and blisters, but since firmness of the affected area and a loss of feeling are associated with frostbite, unfortunately, these symptoms are often ignored. Workers who are not especially on guard against frostbite are likely to just muscle through the cold, which is why strategies to monitor and keep workers warm are so important. Regardless, failure to dress appropriately for cold temperatures is inviting a nip from Jack Frost. This includes use of appropriate gloves, hats, socks, boots, ear and face coverings, and deliberately keeping the body as warm and dry as possible. Imagine working in warm weather with damp clothing, including work gloves and boots. Even then, moisture can cause very real issues with your skin and extremities. In cold weather, it is all that much more important to keep moisture at bay. An extra precaution to take when using nylon or polyester clothing is to avoid exposure to heaters, electrical tools, and other related hazards. Even when used as an inner layer, these synthetics can melt and cause severe skin trauma. Frostbite is not the only danger that can be avoided by keeping skin dry. Immersion foot syndrome, better known as trench foot, occurs when feet are exposed to wet or cold conditions for long periods of time. Did you know that wet feet lose heat 25 times faster than dry feet? That's an incredible difference in the rate of heat loss. This condition does not need to include freezing temperatures, so trench foot is an often overlooked hazard. In fact, when feet are constantly wet or damp, this type of injury can be sustained at temperatures as high as 60 degrees Fahrenheit. You can identify trench foot through its common symptoms, which include leg cramps, blisters, numbness, and reddening, tingling, swollen, or painful skin on the feet. Have you ever heard of OSHA's Focus 4, sometimes known as the Fatal 4? These hazards encompass the most common causes of workplace injuries and death. These are falls, caught in or caught between scenarios, incidents where a worker is struck by a machine, object, or material, and electrocution. These are based primarily around the construction environment, but these Focus 4 are applicable to other settings. If you work in agriculture, industrial settings, transportation, emergency response services, or any other setting that involves heights or the use of or exposure to machinery, tools, or electricity, you are at heightened risk of harm from the Fatal 4. Throw in slick or snowy conditions, and normal walking surfaces can become a major hazard. Snow hides holes and puddles. Ice sheets make transporting materials or even just walking or use of a wheelchair or other device nearly impossible, and every movement is an extra effort. Shrubs, hoses, curbs, and cords hidden by snowdrifts pose serious tripping hazards. The lack of traction and visibility also dramatically increase risk of caught between and struck by hazards. When navigating slush, snow, and icy situations, use extra caution. Put away that smart device and pay more attention to where you are stepping. Scan ahead and walk more slowly and carefully than usual. If a clear pathway is available, use it. One winning strategy is to walk using smaller, short, shuffling steps, almost like waddling, but with slightly bent knees. For added balance, you can keep your arms out to your sides. It is never a good practice to walk with your hands encumbered, so take them out of your pockets. You might need to arrest your fall if you slip or trip. Your choice of footwear is also key. Choose shoes or boots with soles that are made for traction and are designed to be non-slip. If you are carrying materials or equipment, keep the load low to lower your center of gravity. When you are stepping into and out of vehicles or going up and down stairways, apply extra caution. Even stairs and walkways that are free of ice might have piles of sand, salt, or ice melt chemicals built up. These present their own slip hazards. Imagine you are on a ladder. With ladders, 3 points of contact should always be maintained. The same care should be taken in these situations. Be sure to make use of railings for further support, but know that metal railings should be touched using gloves to prevent direct contact with that freezing surface. If you enter a building, watch out for surfaces that are slippery from water and snow being tracked in. While you're at it, take the time to wipe your shoes and remove any extra snow from your clothing. Care should be taken to remove buildup of water and gritty materials or chemical residues throughout the day. Consider installing heated ramps to improve accessibility of facilities. Since cold weather makes slips, trips, and falls more likely, revisit slip, trip, fall training before cold weather hits or prior to a major winter event. Surfaces and materials act differently in cold weather. As a result, electrical incidents are more common in winter weather due to more brittle materials. Cords can be damaged more easily, and the use of snow blowers, plows, and other winter weather equipment increases the risk of lacerations and electrocutions. What is one way you show others you care about them? Typically, when you care about someone, you check in on them from time to time to see how they are doing and if you can help them in some way. Apply this same strategy at work. Consider communication and policies regarding cold stress and winter weather hazards a way of showing your coworkers and employees you care about their health and well-being. What might this look like for you? Examples include having regular weather watches with precautions communicated frequently, if not daily. Checking on employees often and scheduling breaks that allow them to warm up and get dry. And rotating employees between tasks when they are engaged in strenuous or cold weather activities. For instance, if you have workers engaged in snow removal, rotating employees between this task and an indoor task in shifts can prevent strains, frostbite, and overexertion. Other strategies include incorporating a buddy system, where employees work in pairs during cold weather operations, and providing engineering control measures, where the physical environment is changed to separate workers from or reduce exposure to cold hazards, like providing radiant heaters or temporary shelters. While on the topic of communication and controls, caution and wet floor signage should be used when there is a danger of slippery surfaces. Supervisors should make an effort to schedule outside work during the warmest time of day and to be sensitive to changes in wind speeds. Providing warm beverages throughout the workday can make a huge difference as well. Dehydration tends to creep up on workers in cold weather since they tend to be less aware of their water loss. Avoid caffeinated drinks if dehydration is a concern. Any activity that has not been completed since the last cold season is likely to be unfamiliar and awkwardly, or improperly completed without taking time to refresh employees on safe work and equipment pre-checks. For instance, the conditions and skills required for operating and maintaining heavy equipment can change dramatically, even within the same day. This can include traction control in terrain that can go from frozen to muddy in a matter of hours, monitoring battery health, navigating low visibility situations, keeping warm and dry as an operator, ensuring hose lines, filters, and lubricants are appropriate and in good condition, and many other factors that require heightened situational awareness and equipment preparation to ensure safety of the operator and others nearby. For indoor industrial and commercial facilities, the installation and use of high-volume, low-speed fans can dramatically improve comfort and safety by promoting the circulation of warmer air in these spaces. These come with the added benefit of being reversible. So, an investment for cold weather applications to avoid cold stress will double its usefulness in warm weather to mitigate heat stress hazards. Far too often, winter weather hazards are neglected in our busy rush to get to and from work. We've already discussed how slips, trips, and falls play a major role in workplace dangers. But what about just getting to work? Winter weather is something you can plan for. Most people are not surprised that fall follows summer and winter follows fall. Take the time to clear pathways ahead of when you need to be out the door, giving yourself additional time in the mornings to keep paths clear and to walk and drive carefully. You should always have an exit plan for your parking area, and you can often treat the ground along walkways and driveways. Winter weather involves snow, ice, wind, slush, and sleet. These added hazards make driving conditions unpredictable. That is why you should give yourself more time during your commute to and from work to drive slowly and cautiously, avoiding distractions and the frustration of being late. Check the weather ahead of time so you are aware of current road conditions and can prepare for ones that may develop. Consider the fact that it gets darker much sooner in the evening during the winter. It's also a good idea to let people know where you'll be and when you plan to arrive, just in case you run into an issue along the way. So, you got home safely. Nice work. Now you face a new hidden danger: carbon monoxide or CO poisoning. Heating and cooking sources in the home can be a major source of carbon monoxide gas, and this is made worse if a resident has taken care to tighten up their home against drafts. If you park in a garage, never warm up your vehicle inside of the garage, and always keep the doors open. The same is true of gas or diesel-powered equipment at work. These should be moved outside with open bay doors to avoid buildup of poisonous exhaust gases. Do you have CO detectors, and are they located properly? When was the last time you changed the batteries? These are important considerations to support a healthy winter season. Employees should remember that recreational activities like sledding, skiing, and other cold weather fun can impact their ability to work safely. Time off from work due to pulled muscles or illnesses and injuries sustained while off the job could put a real damper on winter fun. It's important to be prepared for emergency scenarios and be able to administer first aid. First aid for hypothermia starts with calling in emergency medical personnel, since this is a life-threatening condition. You should move the victim to a dry, warm place and replace their wet clothing with dry clothing, at the least wrapping their entire body in layers of blankets. Over this blanket layer goes a vapor barrier, which can be a plastic tarp or garbage bag, but you should never cover the victim's face, although their neck and head should still be covered. Ask the 911 dispatcher how long it will take for medical help to arrive and what warming instructions you should follow. If help won't arrive for half an hour or more, these instructions might include providing non-alcoholic, warm, sweetened drinks, or even the use of warm bottles or hot packs in armpits, the groin area, and along the sides of the victim's chest. Frostbite first aid involves all of the steps we discussed from hypothermia, but with special care for protecting damaged areas. Loosely wrap a dry cloth around the affected area. This must be done with special care to protect the damaged area from contact until medical help arrives. Since risk of amputation is very likely, frostbite is an emergency situation, so do not hesitate to call emergency medical personnel. You may be tempted to approach frostbite in ways that work for more traditional conditions, but frozen tissue does not respond the same as simply cold tissue would. If blisters have formed, do not break them, and do not apply snow or water to them. The goal at this point is protection from further harm. Never rub the area, as this will likely damage the skin and underlying tissue. Never try to rewarm the area with heating pads, warm water, or through other means. Leave that to the professionals. First aid for trench foot involves careful removal of the wet footwear, including socks. Dry the victim's feet. This should again be done cautiously and with minimal pressure and bending. The victim should avoid walking, but their feet should be elevated right away. Once this is done, seek medical attention. This might involve a trip to the local urgent care facility. If so, again, take every effort to avoid walking and foot movement, and attempt to keep the victim's feet elevated on the way. Vehicles deserve their own first aid and preventative care. Check your tires for proper pressure and condition before leaving for work. Cold weather will result in lower tire pressures, so it is important to check this as soon as cooler weather hits. When inclement weather is coming on, it is prudent to make sure you have a full tank of gas or a fully charged battery bank for electric vehicles before starting the day. You never know when your vehicle's heater will be your lifeline. The chance of becoming stranded or getting into an accident increases in winter weather, so be sure to also keep your cell phone charged, have a car charger on hand, keep blankets and basic first aid supplies in your vehicle, and consider purchasing an emergency jumpstart kit for your battery. Jumper cables, flashlights, flares, or emergency lights, a small shovel, defrosting spray, non-perishable food rations, and even a bag of sand or ice melt make excellent winter weather additions to your vehicle's preparation kit. Remember that any supplies and equipment must be properly maintained and stored. Replace expired or damaged supplies as needed. These cold weather preparation kits should include basic first aid solutions for treating burns, cuts, abrasions, and other injuries or illnesses. However, providing employees with their own lip balm, chemical warmth packs, and other supplies could go a long way in ensuring winter weather safety and comfort. Brainstorm with your employees and colleagues in a staff meeting or toolbox talk to decide what you should bring to be prepared. This will be a great opportunity to elevate awareness to the dangers of cold and wet work. As with all first aid scenarios, 911 should be called immediately in an emergency. For non-emergency scenarios where you are unsure of treatment or risk of health, call a local medical provider for assistance and guidance. A cold stress situation is always an emergency if a victim's fingers, toes, ears, nose, or other body part goes numb and they cannot regain feeling quickly when warmed. The skin becomes patchy blue or yellow-white, or the victim is unconscious or unresponsive. Symptoms can vary from person to person. As always, when in doubt, call 911. Be sure to also seek out additional training now, before an emergency occurs, on first aid preparation and administration. In emergency situations, while you are waiting for medical personnel to arrive, there are some basic life support strategies to employ. Sweetened, non-alcoholic drink can be added to all first aid sequences, assuming the worker does not have an allergy to consider. Something as routine as taking a drink may also help calm the victim down. You, of course, should never attempt to have an unconscious person drink something. Alcohol plays a big part in making cold weather hazards more dangerous. As the alcohol is metabolized, it lowers a person's body temperature, although it tends to make them feel warmer and provide them with a false sense of cold preparedness. The classic poor judgment brought on by alcohol consumption means that users are more likely to get into vehicular accidents in what are often already poor driving conditions. The overlap of alcoholic beverage use in celebrations during the holiday season with cold weather hazards is deadly ironic. Cold conditions do not only occur during the winter. The effects of cold stress can be felt while working in a walk-in freezer, any damp environment, or when exposed to refrigerants, coolants, and materials like liquid nitrogen. First aid preparedness and quick access to emergency medical resources is crucial year-round. Workers who have underlying health conditions, such as hypertension, hypothyroidism, and diabetes, or who are in poor physical condition, are at increased risk of cold stress. Some workers may have an allergic response to extreme temperatures. It is possible they do not even know about this themselves, so it is important to be aware of the potential reaction. Symptoms can range from hives and swelling to deadly effects such as breathing problems, heart palpitations, and shock. Other medical conditions that may crop up during cold weather include seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is a mood disorder associated with changes in season. Chilblains, a vascular condition involving inflammation of small blood vessels. Raynaud's disease, that typically causes pain and paleness or blueness of the skin. Cold agglutinin, where a person's body attacks their red blood cells in response to cold temperatures. And even a rare type of anemia brought on by cold exposure, where antibodies attack and kill healthy red blood cells. These conditions are rare, but it is important to be aware of them. Employees who know about their predisposition to exposure dangers should take extra precautions or be given reasonable accommodations to avoid cold stress. Since winter is a time of year when many activities shift, such as outdoor work being canceled or delayed, this provides excellent opportunities to put your workforce into action with inventorying, equipment weatherization, development of safety and preparation checklists, annual inspections of safety equipment, including smoke or carbon monoxide detectors, replacement of frayed cords, and of course, continued safety training and the development of job hazard analyses. In this training, you learned about the dangers of cold stress and winter weather hazards. The strategies for preventing cold stress and winter-related injuries, illness, and death are easy to follow. Expose new workers, especially, to these tips on a regular basis, and remind other employees not to become complacent. As our bodies and habits change over time, we may not be aware of increased risk factors. Workers may develop a false confidence in their preparation for cold weather conditions, so ongoing training is key to maintaining awareness and your ability to avoid the threat from cold stress.